Que la fama, perseguida por todos después de su existencia, viva registrada en nuestras tumbas de bronce y nos preste luego su gracia en la desgracia de la muerte. Cuando, a despecho de este voraz devorador, el tiempo, adquiramos por el esfuerzo del soplo presente aquel honor que logre enervar el acerado filo de su guadaña y nos convierta en herederos de la eternidad. Por consiguiente, bravos conquistadores, pues solo lo sois vosotros, que guerreáis contra vuestros propios sentimientos y el ejército enorme de anhelos del mundo. Observemos en toda la rudeza de sus cláusulas nuestro último edicto. Navarra será el asombro del universo. Nuestra corte, una pequeña academia apacible y contemplativa, consagrada al arte.
A ver, atentos al guión. En Shakespeare no sobra una palabra. Todo tiene un sentido profundo y deliberado.
Shakespeare escribió, Navarra será el asombro del mundo. ¿También le daba ese sentido? ¿Sabía de qué hablaba? ¿Conocía a Navarra?
Por supuesto, aunque ahora nos pueda sorprender, Navarra era un reino de prestigio. Los reyes, príncipes y princesas venían a Navarra a casarse, a arreglar pactos y alianzas matrimoniales porque era un reino con solera. En Europa era el reino más antiguo. Navarra tenía una historia larga, una corte culta, avanzada, y aunque pequeña, era rica, bien gestionada, con su hacienda y su cámara de contos. Era un modelo a seguir para otros reinos. Por desgracia, a lo largo de la historia, estados fuertes y poderosos
throughout history, strong and powerful states have always believed that they have the right to invade and crush their weaker or more peaceful neighbours. Navarre, the kingdom of the Basques, a stronghold of defence against the Goths, Franks and Muslims, was founded on the desire of this Pyrenean people to live in freedom. The survival of the state of Navarre, caught as it was between Aragon, Castile and France, was difficult, to say the least. Two hounds with one bone, Utrinque roditur, devoured from both ends. Gradually, conquest by conquest, this incessant military pressure chipped away at the realm of Navarre. When it lost its access to the sea, it found itself trapped between a series of increasingly expansionist states. In the year 1200, Castile conquered the western part of the realm despite fierce resistance from the local population. The fighting in Gasteiz, which you may know as Vitoria, for example, was heroic and desperate, even though the violence perpetrated on that particular occasion has gone down in history as a so-called voluntary union. Despite this, Navarre managed to survive as an independent state, and remained so until it was invaded in 1512. Navarre was no threat to anyone, it simply wanted to retain its independence. The Catholic King of Spain, however, had his own plans. During that period, there was no civil war in Navarre, nor was the state disintegrating, as certain defenders of the conquest would have us believe. Navarre was not allied to France and was no enemy of the Catholic Church. All these lies were invented with the sole aim of justifying a completely unlawful invasion.
Cuando se produce la intervención de Fernando el Católico, el español, en Navarra en 1512, el Estado de Navarro estaba en una situación totalmente pacífica y además se producía en el mismo una restauración del poder estatal gracias a la actuación de Juan de Labrit e igualmente del canciller Juan de Jasso, que buscaban arrebatar a los privilegios que cierta nobleza había conseguido quitar al Estado en la época anterior de las guerras civiles. En aquel momento pues todo estaba pacificado, ya desde la expulsión en 1507 de la propia familia Beaumont. No había pues ningún motivo de guerra y solamente la coyuntura favorable que se presentó ante Fernando el Católico para conquistar un territorio que siempre había estado dentro de sus ambiciones, fue el factor definitivo que explica la conquista misma, con la excusa de que tenía que luchar contra Francia haciendo ver que el rey de Navarra estaba comprometido con Francia, cosa que era totalmente falso.
We have always been lied to. The Spanish used a fake papal bull to turn their attack into a kind of holy war. The 1512 conquest was not a spur-of-the-moment whim. It was part of a strategy of expansion and conquest that lasted centuries, aimed at the occupation and domination of the rich, independent state of Navarre. It was a strategy spiced with an imperialistic Catholic fundamentalist ideology, the same ideology used to justify the centuries of looting and pillaging known as the Reconquest of Moorish Spain. It is the end of July 1512. This is going to be a very difficult and troubled summer in the Kingdom of Navarre. The peace and quiet of its towns and villages will soon be destroyed by the invasion of over 12,000 soldiers sent by King Ferdinand of Spain, known as the Catholic King, who will enter the realm from the west through Sagana. Navarre was in no condition to repel an attack of this size. The capital, Pamplona, Iruña in Basque, had only 6,000 inhabitants, half the size of the invading army. Unlike Castile, Navarre had never been in the habit of raising or maintaining large armies. Nevertheless, some attempts at resistance were made, such as the stand of the Erroncari soldiers in Osquia, but to no avail. The odds were overwhelming. Further south, Aragonese soldiers attacked Tudela, where they met with heroic resistance. Indeed, Tudela continued to resist the invaders even after most of the kingdom had fallen into the hands of the Spanish. Ferdinand's troops marched towards Iruña, and after gathering at Arazuri, beside the palace belonging to the Count of Lerin's brother, they were camped outside the city walls by the 24th of July. The city tried to buy time, and knowing itself defenseless, attempted to agree on terms.
De acuerdo, nos rendimos, pero no en calidad de vasallos, sino como súbditos.
No son los vencidos quienes imponen leyes a los vencedores. Así pues, marchad y comunicad a vuestros convecinos de que os entregan voluntariamente o sufrirán el asedio de las ciudades. Matanzas indiscriminadas, sin distinción de edad ni sexo, quema de haciendas y saqueo de bienes.
Thus, on the 25th of July 1512, the city surrendered, and the Spanish troops marched in. Having occupied the capital, the invading army proceeded to subdue the whole territory, Aizkoa, Zaraitzu and the Erroncari. They crossed the Pyrenees and took Garazi, sacking, burning and killing as they went. Towns were razed to the ground. The Spanish sowed terror all over Navarre. Spanish Colonel Villalba said his criminal behavior was necessary literally in order to impose a healthy degree of fear on the people.
Los episodios de la conquista de Navarra nada tienen que envidiar a las ocupaciones que se realizaron en las cruzadas y en la conquista de América. Fueron tan sangrientas o más, una desproporción absoluta, visto desde que venían el mejor ejército europeo, venían con cañones y preparado absolutamente cuando Pamplona no tenía ejército propio. En Pamplona solo encontraríamos los 3 castillos y un montón de arqueros, y no tuvieron más remedio que rendirse ante la amenaza de saquear Pamplona a sangre y fuego, palabras textuales que empleó el duque de Alba. Después de rendirse Pamplona ante la amenaza del saqueo a sangre y fuego, ellos fueron a ocupar la Baja Navarra, en la que se resistía todavía. No dieron opción ni a siquiera la rendición, sino que hicieron la masacre que correspondía al saqueo. Se violó a las mujeres, se incendió las casas y se robó todo lo que existía. A saco, a saco. Los soldados españoles no cobraban en dinero, sino en lo que saqueaban. Venían aprendidos de Italia y de la conquista de Granada, y en esos sitios se empleaba así. El soldado se quedaba con todo lo que saqueaba, y esa fue la norma que emplearon en la Baja Navarra.
Despite dispersed resistance in many towns and villages, Navarre fell to the Spanish, who were eager to see an end to the campaign. The invaders were aware that they had superior forces, as well as the support of the Catholic Church, but they also knew that the population rejected them. Consequently, they resorted to terror tactics. They took hostages, published threatening edicts, and spent a lot of time and effort on bribes and payoffs. However, they suspected that not even their powerful army would be enough to make the Navarrese renounce their independence. And they were right. The Spanish spent several years conquering and reconquering Navarre. Popular resistance was fierce and heroic. Far from resigning themselves to their fate, the kings of Navarre mobilized their resources and applied to France for help. Help was duly given, although it was not as disinterested as the Navarrese may have wished. In October 1512, the first attempt at recovering the independence of the kingdom was made. Juan of Labrit published a proclaim describing Ferdinand as a person of very poor condition who has caused no end of evil and harm by wielding his tyrannical power over an usurped realm. The population rose against the Spanish all over the land, but all the rebellions were quashed. At one point, the conquerors even found themselves under siege in Iruña, but the uprising failed, despite the heroic efforts of the Navarrese and their allies. The Spanish unleashed a campaign of terror upon the inhabitants of Iruña to prevent them from joining forces with the attackers. Some episodes in particular illustrate the unequal balance of power between the opposing forces. On one occasion, a group of just 100 soldiers from Arroncari captured several hundred Aragonese invaders near Santa Gara. But for their overwhelming numbers, the Spanish troops would surely have been kicked out of the realm just a few weeks after the invasion. The reprisals against the rebels were brutal. Many were executed or imprisoned. Others were exiled or had all their worldly goods confiscated. However, not even this second defeat caused the Navarrese to cease in their attempts at regaining their freedom. A secret report from the Spanish constable states that the Navarrese were bearing the yoke of Spanish rule poorly, and even those who formerly opposed King Labrit now wished to see him back on the throne. Then, in March 1516, a new attempt was made. Marshal Pedro of Navarre, the leading figure in the resistance movement, crossed over the Pyrenees through Roncal. Some towns, such as Zangotza and Erriberri, rose up. However, despite popular support, the attempt failed and Pedro of Navarre and a group of other officers were captured. Pedro was taken to Castile, where he was offered his freedom in exchange for swearing fealty to the Spanish crown. He refused and died in prison at Simancas Castle under suspicious circumstances. In 1521, resistance flared up again, and this time the rebels managed to drive the occupying forces out. Towns and valleys rose against the Spanish troops, which were severely weakened because many had been sent to deal with the revolt of the Comuneros in Castile. The city of Lizarra wrote to the king, "Sire, just turn up and you will see how even the stones, the mountains and the trees are armed for your service." In Iruña, the inhabitants attacked the palace occupied by the viceroy and trampled the emblems of the Spanish royal family underfoot. The Spanish fled in terror. For a month, peace reigned. However, once the Comuneros had been subdued, the Spanish returned and drowned the revolt in blood. At the Battle of Noain on the 30th of June, the fate of the kingdom was decided. The Spanish mobilized over 30,000 soldiers against only 10,000 in the Navarrese-French alliance. The Allied forces were massacred. 5,000 defenders of the independence of Navarre lost their lives on that fateful day. The Spanish victory gave rise to a new period of punishment and reprisals. During the brief month of independence, everyday life had more or less returned to normal. If it had not been for the reappearance of the Spanish troops, Navarre would have re-established itself as a stable, independent kingdom almost immediately. The desire for independence was shared by the vast majority of the population, even those who had collaborated with the invaders in 1512. But even after all this, the struggle for independence continued. In September of that same year, 200 Navarrese occupied Amaiur Castle, which was subsequently besieged by several thousand enemy troops. After a harsh siege, the defenders surrendered under conditions that were later violated. Some were taken to Iruña and poisoned. The castle was destroyed. The defense of Hondarribia fortress lasted longer. The fortress was taken by the Navarrese and their allies in October 1521, and the fighting continued until 1524, when they left the stronghold after extensive negotiations. These episodes were followed by a series of failed conspiracies and attempts to recover the kingdom through diplomatic channels. For 100 years, the fierce military occupation continued. Navarre's castles were destroyed and the population was kept under tight control. The Spanish have never forgotten that they conquered Navarre with the force of their weapons, and it is only because of these weapons that they ever managed to dominate the kingdom. The free, modern development of Navarre was cut short, and the kingdom was turned into a colony. It was occupied by force of arms, politically dominated, and subjected to a terrible process of assimilation. North of the Pyrenees, the kingdom continued to exist as an independent state. However, the French annexed the territory in 1620, and the last vestiges of Navarre finally disappeared altogether during the French Revolution.
Mila 1512ko konkista izugarrizko hondamendia izan zen. Alde batetik estaturik gabe gelditu ginelako, independentziarik gabe gelditu ginelako, eta bestetik jendearen eguneroko bizitza guztiz aldatu zelako. Esan dezakegu maila ekonomikoan, maila politikoan, maila sozialean, legei dagokienez, maila guztietan antzeman zela aldaketa hori, eta aldaketa hori txarrerako izan zela. Azken finean, nafartarrek perzibitu zuten, antzeman zuten, erabakiak kanpotik hartzen zirela, kanpokoek hartzen zituztela, eta beraz kolonizazio prozesu batean murgilduta zeudela, kanpoko batzuek horrelaxe nahi izan zutelako. Beraz, esan dezakegu nahiko argiki 1512an gertatutakoa Nafarroarendako izugarrizko hondamendia, izugarrizko kalamitatea izan zela.
The effects on collective awareness were just as severe. Although it is true that the desire for freedom has never quite disappeared, it is also true that past events have been distorted, and the military conquest has gone down in history as a voluntary agreement. For centuries, certain historians have tried to erase all traces of the infamy and to justify the consequences of the invasion. But Navarre never made a pact with the Spanish crown. Navarre was conquered by the force of arms, through the use of brutal force which has persisted down the centuries, right up to the present day. Navarre is much more than a historical reference, conquered but never subjugated, colonized but never domesticated. Nafarroa, Euskal Herria, the Basque Country, retains the memory of its stolen state. We cannot allow people to keep lying about what happened in 1512. Both those who lie and those who want to recover the memory of what really happened know that any political or legal system based on a cruel, unjustified conquest lacks any trace of legitimacy. We are not talking merely about academic debates about the past. Rather, we wish to reflect on our own situation, our historical evolution, and our rights. We want to remember, and we want the memory of our independence to show us the path towards the future. And we must never forget those who gave all they had to try and resist an invasion which caused so much harm and brought such misfortune to this country.
Cuando los reyes católicos, reyes brutales y ambiciosos, conquistaron Navarra, frustraron un futuro, como decía Shakespeare, admirable. Un futuro que podía haber sido